podcast. I'm your host, Todd Burrows. And with me, my partner, Eric N. Moody. You can find him on Twitter, as you can see right there at Eric N. Moody. I will be doing some sharing of the screen today. We did that a little bit last time. And we're going to go over the free agent moves. We'll look at the ADP of some of these players, where we expect the ADP to go. And we're going to give you our takes on the signings and the teams. We're not going to go into every signing a team has made. Like, we're not going to focus on defense at all today. But key offensive line, perhaps, but mostly skill position players. We're not going to do the salary cap for now. I think what we're going to do is once we get to the point where we're a couple weeks before the draft, we can go through the salary cap and look again at ADP, because ADP will change again then. So that's the basics of what we're going to do tonight. I'm glad to welcome our friends at the FFPC. They are where I'm playing most of my best ball right now. Also, dynasty leagues are going. And they recently announced, again, $500,000 up top in the Football Guys Championship. I'm definitely going to be playing there. And when we talk about ADP for now, that's pretty much what we're going to focus on. Unfortunately, Underdog, I can't play in Pennsylvania. I found out that I could drive to Jersey, sign up, drive home, and draft. But that's a little clunky, but I will do it because I think it's important that's a big up-and-coming site. They just signed Josh Norris to do a football show. So we will cover the other sites, but our friends over at the FFPC, right now it's my favorite. I just made a 28th round selection in one draft, and I took Kiki Kuti, which I thought was a really solid. This is the time of year where you seem to get people you like late. If you know the deep parts of the drafts, it tightens up a lot as we go along. Mm-hmm. If you want to jump in a draft with me, follow me on Twitter at Todd from PA. I definitely post when I'm jumping in a draft. And you can go to myffpc.com. That's myffpc.com. If you don't have an account, sign up and then look for me in the best ball streets. Eric, welcome. We're old men now as part, an old partnership, our second episode together. Oh, yeah. And I'm really glad to have you.
Oh, no, I'm excited to be here. Hey, it's Friday. We had a couple of days of free agency news, which is exciting. I know before we came on, Chris Carson re-signed with the Seattle Seahawks. So Lots of really, really interesting, players that re-signed or signed with new teams to talk about. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and the way we're going to do this, we decided there's a few different ways we could have done it, but we're going to go team by team, additions, key subtractions, and kind of just give quick thoughts about whether we think the teams are still looking for positions, because as you're drafting, it's just as important. It's really important not to get too caught up in what is just going on now. And it's why I talk a lot about exposure and keeping your exposure in line, especially at this point, because, you think, well, Seattle re-signed Chris Carson. They've got Penny. They're not going to draft a running back. Well, rationally, that makes sense, but Seattle is one of the teams that hasn't been rational always. So you don't want to end up with 60% Chris Carson early on because he signed and you think he's safe. So those are some thoughts there. I was hoping we would have Kenny Golladay news for my Giants, but right as of now, he is not signed. I think, Eric, we have to start with the team that has not been big in free agency in the past, but this year they came out swinging, the New England Patriots. Overall, your thoughts on what they did in free agency?
No, I like what they did in free agency. I know they had a lot of holes that they needed to fill, especially at the tight end position. They didn't have a lot of activity there last year. The fewest targets, receptions, receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, from tight ends in the NFL. the Jets were the next worst team when you look at receptions and some of those other things. So if you look at Hunter Henry, he's going to be my preferred target because I know he's gotten a lot of targets. He's been very productive in the passing game. Geno Smith has been kind of more of a inline blocker, but he'll still have some opportunities to get some receptions and some yards and fantasy points as well. Nelson Aguilar was really a head scratcher, just given his contract.
Especially how much they paid him.
Yeah, they paid him a lot of money. Then they still had a number of other viable wide receivers that were out there. So
and Juju went for $8 million today, 1-year contract. Mm-hmm. And look, Aguilar played great. He's one of those guys I think that we're always going to have, there's always going to be that taint of what he was the first couple years in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. It might turn out to be a good decision, but both him and Kendrick Bourne, that those are the two guys you want to go out on day one of free agency. I get on the Giants because often they'll overpay on day one for tier 3 guys. Yeah. And that just is, I'm just morally opposed to that. Let the market settle. And, I would only overpay for that top end guy, that top of the market guy. That's who I'm signing day one, Eric.
Yeah. Yeah. The Kendrick Bourne signing was surprising to a lot of people. But what I thought was interesting, if you look at some of his, combine numbers, especially in the 3-cone drill, his numbers there was 6.73. It's eerily similar to like Julian Edelman and Deion Branch. And so he's kind of like a short area quickness Belichick guy. So I think he'll surprise a lot of people. Him and Aguilar are really intriguing targets in the double-digit rounds, especially if FFPC drafts. It's worth taking a flyer on.
Yeah, and as far as them, I'm a big Jonnu guy. I've always had a lot of Jonnu in my portfolio because he is so talented and he can be spiky, which I love in best ball.
Yes.
A little less, someone that I look for a little less maybe in season long. Mm-hmm. But everyone was really down on them signing both. And I think sometimes, Eric, we forget that NFL teams aren't fantasy teams. And I think what this does, both of these guys are known to be pretty good blockers for tight ends and have pass catching chops. Yes. I think, it opens up the field for Cam Newton because now on either side you have that extra blocker. So if you're running RPOs and things of that nature, you can have an overload on the weak side on any play that you want. So from a football perspective, I like them signing two guys. Mm-hmm. I'm a little more on Jonnu than I am on Hunter Henry, to be honest. Hunter Henry didn't seem to have, coming back from a couple injuries, the explosion last year. Mm-hmm. I don't know why Justin Herbert didn't target him.
Good point.
I am going to, I think that, Jonnu's ADP is going to stay where it was, where I was drafting a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And I think he's the type of guy who is going to be streaky and a really good number 2 in number 2 tight end. Mm-hmm. I think he's an ideal number 2 still. Yeah, where I think Hunter Henry's still going to be going at the back end of tight end 1.
Yeah, no, really good points. Obviously, Smith is going to be the better value, but Patriots have proved in the past, and like two tight ends can thrive in fantasy. Not exactly saying they're Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez, but hey, it is in the realm of possibilities. I think just to kind of bring all that together, I would say a better comparison would be in 2019 when you looked at what Zach Ertz was able to do and Dallas Goedert, where I think Ertz finishes the tight end 2 or 3 and Goedert is the tight end 10. So I can definitely see fantasy production like that from Juno and Hunter Henry.
Yep. So this is the RotoViz FFPC exposure tool, and one of my favorite things to do. And I've kind of set it over here from 3:8 to 3. Let's look at this again. 3:15 to 3:19. So let's put in Jonnu. And that didn't work. Can you see the screen okay?
Yeah, I can see it.
So we got Jonnu and we got Hunter Henry. And let me make it a little longer. All right. So you can see Hunter Henry's ADP has dropped significantly since the move, right? And Jonnu, you had that nice move up right until where Hunter Henry signed, and now you see him dropping back here. So at this rate, I'm going to look at Jonnu more than Hunter Henry. What are your thoughts, Eric?
Now, I do agree with you because they are both going to get opportunities, considering the contracts that they signed. But it's just when you look at like from a value lens, like if you can wait and get Juno as opposed to Hunter Henry.
Is it Juno or is it Jonnu?
I don't know. I'm assuming you're probably right. I feel like I'm butchering it. So those that are listening,
I just thought that. So the other thing that I want to mention to anyone listening is we will take comments if you want to jump in. I posted on Twitter. I don't expect too many as we start to build this podcast. We've got some nice things coming up. Next week, we've got Michael Dubner from RotoViz coming on, and we're going to talk about Spike Weeks with him. And then I think we'll bring Shane Hallam back, Eric, next week for the other half of the rookies positions. Nice. Following week or the week after, Scott Barrett will be joining us. He put forth the whole best ball thing. Did you get the link to the article that I sent you?
Yes, I did. Thank you for that.
I went through that. There's some good stuff in there. We'll be going over that. And if you guys have any suggestions for guests, we're always open here to bringing on the best guests in the industry to discuss best ball and at times season long. So let's go back to the Patriots. We talked about the other guys. Gun to your head, do you think Cam Newton's the starting quarterback this year?
I do.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I think his ADP, if we look at it, so he had a big upswing after he was signed. I guess they put an X marks the spot for the day he signed. I don't know. But that's pretty cool if that's what it is. It looks like it. Anyway, his ADP is still in the 160s on FFPC. And when you look at the quarterback position, only the quarterbacks – and quarterbacks have been going 2 to 3 rounds earlier this year. Well, we're going to get into that at some point. And, of course, this is going to take a while now.
That's what always happens.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, just while you're doing that. Now, I really like Cam as a late round quarterback option. Some people may have or be looking through the rearview mirror when considering drafting him. But with these receiving weapons that he has, another year, in Belichick's offense, with that team, I think he's positioned for late round, QB1 value, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that this thing has taken its good sweet time reopening. Doesn't seem like it wants to.
Yeah, not a problem.
But Cam, last I looked, was going, close to 20. This is frustrating. So now it wants to do that.
Yeah, they're doing what they can to surround him with, at least with weapons. I know it's probably tough for Belichick to, watch Tom Brady leave, go to the Buccaneers, win a Super Bowl. But then they leaned so heavily on the running game last year, which I know they'll still lean on the running game this year, but I think they're definitely going to pass more with these weapons that they've added on. I think something else to consider too with Cam is just his overall, body of work. If you look at last season, it was really a down year for him. But if you look at, the previous seasons that he's had, he's finished as a QB1 in a very high percentage of his games. So he's got the potential, there to do it. When you look at his rushing upside, rushing yards, he's a complete
He's always had spike weeks, and he's going off at number 27. And he's going to have a rushing floor most weeks. And look, if you need Cam Newton to be your number one or your number two, you probably aren't winning a best ball. But, as I always talk about, I especially like spike weeks for my number three guy, or if I have spikier quarterbacks earlier, then, but when you look at Jared Goff in Detroit or Garoppolo or Wilson, I think Cam is very viable there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you.
And then that's pretty much it for the Patriots. Any other comments on what they've done? They still have some draft picks, but it wouldn't shock me if they went defense or offense. They re-signed David Andrews. They re-signed Thuney, did they, or did he go to Kansas City? I think he went to Kansas City.
KC. Yeah,
Right.
but yeah, no, I don't really have any other thoughts. I could see them getting a quarterback, just given the structure of Newton's contract. But looking forward to diving into some of these other teams. So.
Yep. Let's move over to the Washington football team, who has traditionally just been awful in as an organization. Their owner is still awful, but we won't go there. But I like what they've done, bringing in Ryan Fitzpatrick. I am a big Terry McLaurin fan.
Yes.
And I want to check what his ADP and Curtis Samuel's ADP is. But your take on that offense with the addition of Curtis Samuel and Ryan Fitzpatrick?
No, I love it. I said the Curtis Samuel signing was one of my favorites of free agency thus far. With Ryan Fitzpatrick, you get a very competent quarterback, lots of experience, statistical body of work is good on the many teams that he's played for. He does elevate Terry McLaurin, the wide receiver one status. He has the potential to see 140 or more targets. Curtis Samuel is more of an upside wide receiver 3 when you look at his rushing upside. But it also helps Logan Thomas, too, who can be viewed as a low-end tight end 1, in my opinion. Just to bring all that together, I'm like, Fitzpatrick, he's finished as a QB2 or better in 77% of his games since 2010.
Yep, I agree. This time I'm getting the charting up before I get it going. And now let me.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I'll kind of fill in some gaps while you're getting that loaded up. You've got Samuel. He's got that rushing ability.
Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you, Eric.
Go ahead. Yeah.
On Twitter, there was a big argument today about whether that they didn't use Curtis Samuel right in Carolina, and it's the same people. And I responded that Scott Turner's not his dad, and Scott only had a couple days with Samuel. And I personally think, they used him with more of a downfield presence, but who's to say that they won't do both now that they've gotten him here?
Yeah, no, I think it's some truth to that, because you don't want to assume that NFL coaches, players, like they're not going to evolve. It's pretty streamlined for me. You look at what he was able to do last year. It's on film. It's like, hey, we could do a little bit of that. We can do even more too. So I totally agree with you there.
Yep. And you can see that the Fitzpatrick signing has moved up Terry McLaurin as I thought it would.
Yes.
He's inside, you're probably going to start seeing him go round 3, it looks like. And Curtis Samuel was such a bargain. He's started heading up. I think it's something we're going to have to check back in on in the next couple weeks. This is a pretty cool thing. It's ADP risers and fallers.
Yeah.
And it gives you, so you see that Cam and Fitz are both guys who've moved up the most. Anthony Firkser, I don't remember that Gostkowski signed. And then Andy Dalton's is gone up. Mac Jones, Drew Lock, Damian Williams, Todd Gurley, and Marcus Mariota have all gone down. Yeah. So this is a pretty cool chart as well.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move over to any thoughts on any other thoughts? Do you think they're going to still look to add weapons here? I think they're pretty good on offense as far as the skill positions now.
Yeah, especially with the addition of Samuel, they are in pretty good shape. They've got Antonio Gibson that's there, who's well positioned to take a step forward as RB2, high end RB2 at this point. I just think they'll end up adding some additional pieces on defense, continue to fortify the offensive line. They just have a lot of young players there on defense. So I'm sure they want to try to capitalize, within this window.
All right, let's go to the Jets and Corey Davis signing. Kind of mixed take by people on Twitter. Eric, what is your thoughts on the contract and bringing Corey Davis in to be a number one?
Yeah, I'm okay with that because they did pay him a lot of guaranteed money, and so that suggests we'll see a steady
Less
dose
than
of
Aguilar.
targets. Yeah, yeah, the Aguilar one, everyone's been talking about that, but I don't have a problem with the contract and then bringing them on. They have Denzel Mims that's there, Jamison Crowder. Davis had a career year last season with his receiving yards. His catch percentage is really high. From a fantasy lens, I think he can be a solid wide receiver 3 with upside, just depending on how the Jets handle the quarterback situation. Will Darnold come back? I know a week or so ago it was all about Deshaun Watson. I know obviously some off the field things going on with him that could jeopardize that deal. And
I don't know if the Jets are going to be able to massage that deal.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be able to. I just think they're going to end up moving
That was
forward
a
with
joke, by
Darnold.
the way.
Oh, with the Jets, I
No,
didn't catch
massage the deal.
Oh, I didn't catch that. That's terrible. Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible. We may hear about that in the comments. No, just
not so far.
I was sitting there. I was connecting the dots in my head. And it just kind of totally.
You'll get used to those.
Yeah.
I'm pretty known for those, the puns and the play on words, and everyone and of course a lot of times it goes over people's head. And this is the first time that people have actually been able to see the reaction rather than just hear it.
Yeah, but with Corey Davis, no, I like the addition. I'm personally one that's high on him with the opportunity that he has, just considering the other pieces that are around him.
Yep, and they also added Keelan Cole and Tyler Kroft signed today. I think Keelan Cole is great depth. The Jets have had some injuries. They were linked to Juju. A little disappointed they didn't get that done. I know it would have meant Jamison Crowder may be going away, but I still think I was really disappointed about Juju re-signing with Pittsburgh. I wanted to see what would happen with Claypool and Deontay Johnson without him. But it is what it is. When you have a talented guy like that, and there's been some questions about his motivation, and the things that he's interested in. And when he's playing at a high level and then it drops 2 seasons in a row, he ended up back in Pittsburgh on a 1-year prove-it deal. Your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's not ideal, but my assumption is that he takes that deal with Pittsburgh. He's got Big Ben that's there. He knows the scheme. He's betting on himself. Have a monster season, try to get a payday this time next year. That was kind of my take on it. But as far as from a fantasy lens, I like it. It elevates Ben Roethlisberger's ceiling. I think it's really good for Juju, Claypool, and Deontay Johnson. I just want to see Juju stay strictly from the running from the slot. And I think by doing that, he's going to be in a position to have a really good season.
All right. We talked about Chris Carson going back to Seattle. I thought that the Steelers, while we're on the Steelers, I would have thought that he would have been a really great guy to have. And the Steelers, look, they could add, obviously, they could add someone in the draft at the running back position. But right now, and I'm going to get this up and then switch over. Anthony McFarland and Benjamin Snell are basically free in drafts right now.
Yes.
We're going to, and I've had one draft where I drafted both of them. I have no problem doing that.
Very nice.
That late, if they don't, even if they don't add someone in the first or second round, McFarland has both of them have pretty good draft capital. You bring in someone in the third, fourth, fifth round, there's no guarantee that guy is even going to see the field year one. And it could be McFarland and Snell splitting the duty. I like McFarland coming out. I thought he was pretty explosive, and Snell looked a little thinner last year, a little more explosive himself. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd be perfectly fine. I'm like, if the Steelers move forward, with Snell and McFarland, the former running back by committee. I do like both of them, from a fantasy lens. It's one of those scenarios where if I'm in draft and I want a piece of that backfield, I'm just going to prioritize and target the one that's the last man standing, so to speak. I'm also very high on both of those players.
Yeah, and when you look over here and you see, right around 240, and because there hasn't been any news, you're starting to see McFarland move a little, Snell move very little. But look,
yeah,
pick 240 to pick 280. I mean, what do you got to lose?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's move on back to my Giants. Still no word on Kenny Golladay. John Ross, I thought, was a very good signing.
Yes.
Getting a former number one for $4 million. But I was just gobsmacked. I like Kyle Rudolph as a player, but it's just peak Dave Gettleman to pay $6 million for 31-year-old Kyle Rudolph. I mean, with a team with cap issues, this is why they're mediocre constantly, because he doesn't maximize his cap and he doesn't maximize his draft capital. Would you agree with that?
I do. My initial thought was like, Gettleman's so bad, the owner should put him on a performance improvement plan, some of his decision making. But no, I do like John Ross quite a bit. To your point, you get a number 9 overall pick, for the 2017 NFL draft. He hasn't lived up to his lofty draft status yet, but you look at his career. He's played in 27 games, has 51 receptions for 733 yards and 10 touchdowns. Everyone knows him for that phenomenal 40-yard dash at the combine. But he's a vertical threat, and I think a very viable bounce-back candidate with the Giants. Kyle Rudolph, to your point, overpaid. You got Evan Ingram that's there. Really no fantasy value with Kyle Rudolph unless Evan Ingram misses time or is somehow traded. So that's my take.
And it wouldn't shock me if they did trade Ingram. The Giants and Gettleman have a history of trading talented people who they just don't trust. They've got that old-fashioned mindset, and I mean that in kind of all the wrong ways. You hate to point to that, but it just does seem very odd. But Jason Garrett is again. It's just hard, as a Giant fan, it's hard to get excited. You've got this seam splitter in Bobby Ingram, and he had him using late career Jason Witten routes last year. And then they look at him and say he didn't have a good year. I just, the coaching has not been up to snuff.
Yeah, then you have to watch the press conferences and deal with Jason Garrett. With him speaking, it's like, hey, I got to tell you, I'm really proud about the activity I've seen from this football team. All 3 facets of the game: offense, yeah; defense, special teams, yeah. So here you go, have fun with that. I've dealt with him.
Are you a Cowboy fan?
I watch the Cowboys, but I'm a diehard Saints fan.
Oh.
But since I live in Dallas, very familiar with the Cowboys, and I've watched way too many Jason Garrett press conferences, let me tell you.
Yeah, that's one of those ones like in the movies where they force your eyes open.
Yeah, Clockwork Orange.
Watching Jason Garrett on a loop. So let's go to the Saints. The biggest news is that Drew Brees retired. And I think the biggest question is what are they going to do? And I know a few guys who are drafting Taysom Hill and Winston together. But I don't know that I like that as his second and third quarterback, simply because there is, if they took peak, he was still peak Drew Brees when they drafted Taysom Hill. and
Yeah.
they brought Taysom Hill in to run goal line with Drew Brees. Why wouldn't they do that? Even if I think Taysom Hill is the better bet. But I think I want a little bit of Winston, and I want a more of Taysom Hill, because I think that A, Taysom could win the job, and B, I don't know that I love Winston's upside, and I just don't trust Jameis Winston. I don't know that with Hill there, if he throws 4 interceptions one day, that Taysom Hill's not, even if he wins the job coming out of camp, I find him hard to trust with Hill there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like my personal thoughts is that Winston will end up winning the job. Just being very familiar with the Saints, I'm like, a lot of quarterbacks can really thrive in Sean Payton's scheme, and I think it helps Winston that he was there last year, so he's going to have a full off season, with the team. And I think one reason why they went with Hill last year is because Winston at that point hadn't even been with the team for a year. It was a weird off season with COVID.
True.
And so I was sitting there thinking, okay, hey, they're gonna go with Hill. He's been there, easy plug and play. But I think it's going to be a different dynamic this summer where those two are out there competing. And it's just tough to overlook Winston's statistical body of work since coming into the league. I know everyone talks about the interceptions, the turnovers. I get that. But if you look at,
from a fantasy perspective, he, as I was talking, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, you better. Sometimes you're too smart for your own good, and you overlook a guy who has top 5 potential. And in that offense, if it is Jameis, he has top 5 potential. I classically, I think I mentioned it in our first pod, I classically didn't draft much of Alvin Kamara or Michael Thomas the last 2 years because they were both there. And I thought that, having both of them there, it's hard for both of them to be first round picks. Yeah. And then each year, one of them got hurt and the other crushed. And I didn't plan for that possibility. So I think similarly with Jameis, it's a high powered offense. The more I think about it, I think you're right. I think you need to make sure you have some of both.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then just with not being constrained by like Drew Brees' arm strength, I think will really come into play because it's been pretty rough the last 2 seasons of his career. So
the one thing about Taysom Hill is he looked for Michael Thomas. If Taysom does win the job, I expect that people will forget that a little bit, and I think that I think he'll, right now Michael Thomas, I've gotten him in the mid-3rd round in a few drafts. Yeah. And I just auto take him if he's around in the 3rd round. Guy coming off an injury. Anyway, they did lose a couple guys. They lost Manny Sanders. They lost Jared Cook. They're in cap hell a little bit. We're not doing caps, but that's a team that still has cap issues.
Yes.
So. But I think Sean Payton is good enough that that offense will be good no matter what.
Yeah, exactly.
From a fan perspective, how are you feeling about them?
No, I feel good. It's I know whenever Drew Brees, linked up with Payton, many years ago. I know they helped design that offensive scheme, together. And so I have the utmost confidence that Sean Payton will play to, whoever the starting quarterbacks' strengths are, whether it's Winston or Taysom Hill, and they'll just kind of, pick up right where they left off. So I don't have any concerns, but I'm excited to see who will be under center for the next chapter of Sean Payton's career in New Orleans.
Yep. Let's talk about the Bucs. And they just are bringing the band back together. I think that it hurts Godwin, and it hurt. I think that the only guy that I'm really drafting right now on that team is Tom Brady, because I think his ADP, because he's older, he's going. Let me look.
probably a nice value.
He's going off as the 12th quarterback off the board.
Yeah.
So, he's at the end of that quarterback run, right ahead of Joe Burrow, Ryan Tannehill, Trevor Lawrence, and Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
And sorry, someone's blowing up my texts.
Oh yeah.
A
Yeah.
good
No worries.
friend, and it's just not the.
Yeah, but it seems like that's a nice value for for Tom Brady. And to your point, Todd, they're bringing the band back together. I think the Godwin move makes sense. I know he dealt with several injuries last season and missed 4 games, but led the Buccaneers with 232 receiving yards and a touchdown in the postseason. And then with Gronk, everybody knows like the rapport that Gronk and Tom Brady have, that they've had for a while. I think we saw that in the Super Bowl, with those 2 touchdown receptions and just, slinging it back and forth. So,
yeah, I haven't drafted Gronk yet, but that second year back, I think it's in the realm of possibility that he plays better the second year back than he did the first. He missed a full year at an older age. Right now, he's going off as the 20th tight end.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. And the next team, they went out and got the only wide receiver dustier than Larry Fitzgerald, AJ Green. They lost Kenyon Drake. The guy that I'm starting to draft, and I probably should keep my mouth shut, but they haven't even been linked to any running back so far. Is Eno Benjamin. I mean, I got him in the 28th round, 27th round. So
yes.
You agree?
Yes. Took the words out of my mouth, Todd. Took them out.
So I don't think Eno's any good, and I don't think you should draft him in the drafts that I'm in.
No, I'm right there with you because I was like, say Eno Benjamin, and you did. So, yeah, I love Eno Benjamin. I've loved this guy since watching him in college. So I think what's interesting, I'll dive a little deep on this, but not too deep down the rabbit hole, just so people that are listening or watching, will understand. I'm like, you look at Edmonds. I'm like, he was tremendous in his limited usage last season. But I'm like, the one game, remember, I think it was against Miami, where they wanted to give him bell cow usage. I guess, as they say, we'll say he wet the bed on that game.
He did good the year before when they bell cowed him that one game. Yeah. But look, he's a small guy. I find it hard to believe they're just going to, make him a bell cow.
No,
I think they like Eno. Mm-hmm. And again, they could bring in a back during the draft, but Eno's free.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, my last pick, I took Kiki Kute because I already had 7 running backs. And I'm staring at Eno going, I know I should be taking more Eno right now. Yeah. Because, he's one of those guys I think would not surprise me if we get through the draft and they don't draft anyone early. He's going to start going 12th, 13th round, Eno Benjamin.
Yeah, I'm like, we're looking at a committee, so I doubt they'll use Edmonds as the bell cow. But everyone they just have to remember about what he was able to accomplish at Arizona State. I'm like, first player in Arizona State history to have 1,000 more rushing yards in consecutive seasons since Freddie Williams from 74 to 75. Guy finished top 10 in rushing yards, touchdowns, attempts, 100-yard games.
When Frank Kuhn was the coach at Arizona State.
Yeah, go ahead.
They were undefeated, I think, in 74.
Not sure. I'll have to lean on you on that one. But it's just like he's got records, at the school, and he's got a really high dominator rating, too, for those that follow that metric. Was really good nationally when you look at missed tackles during the 2019 regular season. He ranked 10th. And so excelled at yards after contact. So I think, to your point, this is a guy that is being overlooked. So I'll tell you this. I don't know if you agree with me here. it's possible that I'm like he has more fantasy points at the end of this year than Chase Edmonds. It's in the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I think that there's a certain type of back that's very effective in the run and shoot. Not the run and shoot. What do they call the
Air
offense?
raid.
Air raid.
Yeah.
It was not 1974. It was 1975 with Frank Kush as not Kuhn as coach. They were 12-0, and they were known for the most famous guy on that team was John Jefferson of the Chargers, who might be an All-Pro. I mean, a Hall of Famer. Let me see, John Jefferson.
I'm trying to think about him.
Four-time Pro Bowl, two-time first-team All-Pro, second-team All-Pro, two-time NFL receiving touchdown leader. So, no, it does not look like he's a Hall of Famer, but he was a really good wide receiver. All right. So as I often do, old guy digress. Seattle brought back Chris Carson. That takes a shot at my Rashad Penny shares.
Oh,
but he's cheap enough that I don't think it'll matter. The signing that really interests me here is Gerald Everett.
Oh, yeah. I've got an opinion. You want to go first?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the tight end production that the Seahawks had like last year, and it was a cluster because you had like Greg Olsen, you had Will Disley.
Hollister just signed somewhere else.
Yeah,
and then you got Disley.
Yeah, so it was crazy. If you combine like all that tight end production, all three of them into one, not bad for a for a fantasy tight end. I would say my biggest concern. I love Everett as a player. It's just he's kind of in a similar situation for where he's got like he was in LA, where he's going to be splitting opportunities with Disley. So I like him as a player. I just think he may be one of those tight ends that can be really volatile. But I think he's going to have some really big games.
Yep, and you can see that his ADP has started to move off of the signing. And it could go Wile E. Coyote, as I like to call it, where people get so enthused that they take the value off the cliff of value.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see. Wilson does throw to the tight ends.
Yes.
And but there is still a question if he's going to be there. But supposedly they turned down 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick. It's going to be really hard. If that's the price, it's going to be really hard for anybody to get Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I just don't think it's going to happen.
They wanted a quarterback, right? So here's the dilemma. The team that really could make a move for Russell Wilson is the Jets.
Yeah.
They've got the second pick, and they've got Sam Darnold. Darnold being a USC guy, supposedly Pete Carroll likes him. I would love to see Sam Darnold in Seattle. I think, run and then throw the deep ball. I think that would really fit Sam Darnold's skill set. And as a latent New York Jet fan, I've always rooted for them since my first year watching football. They won the Super Bowl in 1969 with Joe Namath. I would love to see Russell Wilson as a Jet. I think that would be really nice. Yeah, all right. What's wrong with the Raiders? I know the answer, but I want you to tell me.
What's not wrong with the Raiders? It's I would say they're not using their brain. You want to go up to Gruden and say, use your brain, Gruden, use your brain, because adding Kenyon Drake, we got Josh Jacobs that's there. It's kind of the scenario where each one is going to cannibalize each other's value. But what really had me scratching my head was that the two don't really complement each other well. It's not like, Kenyon Drake's an excellent receiver. He can complement Josh Jacobs. It's like they're essentially kind of the same player. So it's really a head scratcher.
And isn't Jalen Richard still there?
Exactly. That's another point I was thinking. He is still there. So it's just not ideal for fantasy. Again, it's one of those scenarios. If you're like, looking at Josh Jacobs, or you're looking at Kenyon Drake, just take the cheaper option, which I think at ADP it's most likely going to be Kenyon Drake. So.
I was not big on Josh Jacobs last year at ADP.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the beginning, and then
Yeah.
I kind of because Mayock came out and said they want to throw the ball to him more, and then Gruden basically said no, and then they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they took him off the field for Devontae Booker. Now they brought in Kenyon Drake. For me,
Yeah.
Josh Jacobs, worse is they just gave up the best part of their team, their offensive line. They just started cutting and
Yeah.
trading players. It's been a disaster since Gruden got there. He wasn't good when he got full control in Tampa Bay
Mm-hmm.
15 years ago, and all our fears about what might happen, or as I used to like to say about Mike Holmgren, is Mike Holmgren, the general manager, got Mike Holmgren, the coach, fired. Eventually, no matter how much money Mark Davis is going to owe him, it's got to start sinking in that this isn't the guy to run your franchise.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I do like the John Brown
I
signing
do too.
with bringing him on. He brings like that playmaking ability that really the Raiders just didn't have last year. Looking at some of their stats, I'm like, the Raiders only scored like 8 more passing touchdowns and rushing touchdowns last year. And so they're just receivers. They were unable to break away for those long touchdowns, leading to the team having to say, hey, we got to go with the running game here to make it happen. And so I think of Brown, gives them a vertical threat, take the top off of coverage and just really allow the other receivers to run more freely. So definitely a good thing for Henry Ruggs, Brian Edwards. And it could also even open up the running game as well, just for large gains on like inside zone runs. So I really like the move.
Yeah. So back to Mr. Ruggs.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I'm looking up his ADP right now.
He's like dirt cheap.
Oh yeah, he's right around pick 200.
Yeah.
And I know he's disappointed compared. It was dumb that they took him over Jefferson and some of the other wide receivers.
Yeah, in
but he
hindsight.
was hurt, and he did flash. So it'll be, I think he's a guy that I think I would take Ruggs over John Brown, honestly.
No, I would too.
If they're at about the same ADP, and I think they might be once this all settles out. Let me take a quick look at that. Ruggs, John Brown.
Yeah, it's one of those you want to go with the younger guy. It's funny while you're looking that up because it's
you're gonna like this one. It looks like a fish. If you know the biblical fish.
Yeah, no, I know exactly.
It kind of looks like that. It kind of looks like that.
Wow.
You see it?
I do. Yeah.
So John Brown's ADP is spiking up. Ruggs is spiking down. If that continues, to get Henry Ruggs right now, he's at pick 200. Someone's got to catch passes there, and he's the first round pick. I think that's a pretty interesting one.
Yeah, no, I do. I agree.
All right, let's go over to I almost said the Clippers, the Chargers. They let Hunter Henry go, replaced him with Jared Cook. Everyone is crying that Donald Parham season is over. It looks like they franchised Mike Williams.
Yes.
Do you agree with the decision to keep Williams over Hunter Henry?
I do. Yeah, I do. Just given Hunter Henry's injury situation, and with Mike Williams having Keenan Allen, I like the move. To your point, it's like the signing of Jared Cook does shut down the Donald Parham breakout season party. But I think on the flip side, it really speaks volumes about the confidence that the Chargers actually have in Parham. Maybe they're like, hey, this guy is phenomenal in spurts, but do we really want to have this guy be an every down tight end? And so I'm okay with both of those moves that they have, but having Keenan Allen and Mike Williams for Justin Herbert to throw to is optimal. And it's just he's a short-term solution, so I think it just helps to that continuity.
So here's something that I've been doing. Yeah, you'll see it here in a second. I'll
That's
pull
fine.
it up. Hopefully this isn't too distracting when I do it, but I really think that it's good to show these screenshots.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So you notice anything right around here? 23%. Tyron Johnson. We talked about that last time, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I'm a really high on Johnson.
Yeah, from your article. So I'm drafting them together. It's not a surprise that 23% I have, because I'm drafting them in like the 25th and 26th round back to back. I
That's
really
valid.
think one of those guys is going to do it.
Yeah, no, they're great number 3 options. And then just who
And
knows
then
what
if
will end up
Mike
happening.
Williams gets hurt, which he always
Exactly.
seems to,
Yeah.
even if you get 4 or 5 weeks, one of them goes off. Miami, they were talking to about Chris Carson, about, there's a lot of smoke about them getting a back, but they haven't.
Yeah.
And they got a great deal on Will Fuller.
Mm.
But I'm a big of Will Fuller guy as there is out there, but I don't know if Tua is, what is. I think it's a ding for Fuller.
Yeah, no, I think we're aligned there because I'm not a big fan of the signing. Fuller goes from catching passes from Deshaun Watson to Will Fuller. Yeah, I mean, not to Will Fuller, to Tua. You know what I meant. And
Yep.
so he's going to essentially, I think he's going to regress to being like what he was before, a very volatile fantasy option, really dependent on big plays and like touchdowns. So I don't like it.
Which at pick 100.
Mm-hmm.
I'm perfectly happy to take him in the 9th round.
Yeah.
As my 3rd or 4th wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
So his ADP was already, really bad for what he showed last year before the suspension.
Yes.
And now he's heading right toward pick 100. Are you interested in him that late in best ball, where you don't have to choose to start him on a given week?
No, it takes away like with some of the volatility. Like at that stage of the draft, I'm like, you can embrace that volatility and survive at that point. I'm just afraid that his ADP will end up rising. I could be wrong.
Initially it's dropped on the news, but we'll see. Yeah. If he catches a long bomb in preseason from Tua, he'll go through the roof.
Yeah.
People realize what they might be missing. San Francisco didn't sign any skill players, but they re-signed the guy who might be the best left tackle in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And they got a very, very good veteran center in Mack. They've already been a great running offense. Jeff Wilson, Zach Kruger was on talking about Jeff Wilson last week. Mostert's ADP is pretty low also. Mm-hmm. I need to start getting pieces of that running game.
Yeah. No, but I like the signings. Anytime that you can strengthen or fortify like an offensive line, like that bodes well for the offense, for the quarterback from a protection lens, with the running game too, with being able to open up holes, for them to run through. And so we all know about how prolific San Francisco's running game is. And so, hey, good move.
The Jaguars, Marvin Jones, Carlos Hyde, and Dorsett. I know that Urban Meyer is supposed to be a genius, but I don't know. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and it's not really going to move the needle for fantasy. I just think they brought Marvin Jones in just with that young group of receivers, just to have a veteran presence that's there. I know Jones set like a career high last season with 76 receptions, but I'm like, you're essentially looking at Jones as like a low end wide receiver 3. I'm like, that's pretty much what he's been over the last 2 seasons. His numbers are going to take a hit just with all the receiving weapons that they have, and also think that they're going to continue to be committed to James Robinson, like in the running game. And so I kind of view Jones as like a high-end wide receiver 4. If you want to go there, Philip Dorsett, I'm just like, it's kind of hard to get excited, about him. He's not really on the fantasy radar for me. And then Carlos Hyde, I'm like, I'm still
He's
amazed
one of
that
the
Hyde's still
when they
getting
signed
paid.
him,
He's
I'm
been
like,
like a
is he still
journeyman.
even an NFL player?
Yeah.
Why is he getting taken in a signing on like day 2 of free agency? That was a double take for
Yeah.
me.
So I think on the flip side with the Hyde signing though, it really gives you more confidence in James Robinson. That's what it does for me. So
a few years ago there was a show, Everyone Hates Chris. I feel like that's Andy Dalton. And, Andy Dalton isn't the high-end quarterback that you might have wanted. He certainly didn't look very good in Dallas last year.
no.
But it's an odd signing, but, Ryan Pace has done nothing but bad things and somehow kept his job.
Mm-hmm.
But, we said it last year about Nick Foles, but I got to say it again. I think Andy Dalton's an upgrade at quarterback.
Yeah, I'm like Dalton's had his moments, in Cincinnati. I'm like he's had some big fantasy games, and I think he can do it again in 2021. I'm like, if you look at who he has to throw to, he's got Allen Robinson, he's got Darnell Mooney, and he's got Cole Kmet. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. At tight end, so he does have some weapons. But on the flip side, just given Dalton's age, I'd be really surprised, like if Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy don't trade up in the draft to acquire a quarterback. But it's odd because I'm like, they're on the hot seat. Their job's on the line, but they're essentially in bed with Andy Dalton. So we'll see what happens.
I mean, look, they did their best to get Russell Wilson before they signed Dalton. I got to give them credit for trying.
Yeah.
I like Cole Kmet a lot. I know that they have kind of a tight end fetish, but Kmet looked really good for a rookie tight end. And his ADP right now is 132. He's tied with Evan Ingram for me as my second highest owned tight end, and Jonnu's my highest.
Nice.
I was buying on the fact that Jonnu was the uncertainty over Jonnu, and then I was like, yes, I win. And then a day later, I'm like, not so fast.
Yeah. Oh, well. I'd say going back to Dalton, I'm like in best ball, I'm like he's not a bad QB3 option. In drafts, I'm like he's going to have some big games, right?
You would think. The Titans lose Jonnu and Corey Davis both. I mean, I don't get letting both of them go. Some people are talking about A.J. Brown 140 receptions, but boy, I don't know. They're a very conservative team. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked that they run out some names that we barely know and throw them the ball. I like A.J. Brown, but if his ADP starts being in the mid-second round, I'm not going to be that interested.
Yeah, it's just with that news, like to your point, I'm like people are going to set their sights on his ADP is going to spike up, and you'll see a lot of targets. But I can't stress enough, it helps to have another receiver there to take some of the defensive heat away. I'm like, it helps. And so I think Corey Davis was able to provide that last year with the season that he had. So I'm curious to see who the Titans add, to their group of receivers. So.
Yeah, you could see a first-round wide receiver, or at least second. So here's A.J. Brown's ADP. Again, it's a small sample size from 3.8 to 3.19, but you have seen him slowly inch up into the second round. Yeah, he was in, and now he's kind of drifting back towards the end of the second round. I'm not sure. I got to think about that one some more. He's certainly got the talent, but I just don't like when people assume, well, Corey Davis and Jonnu left, so he's going to get a ton of targets. I don't know that I like that assumption.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. You're right, because you've got to look at both sides of the coin. And to your point, you can't make assumptions And so it's something to factor in for where, hey, maybe I shouldn't draft this guy so high. Like, who knows? I mean, he could end up being like drafted in the back end of the first round. Who knows what's going to happen with this ADP once everyone really takes in this news? And so it's definitely too rich for my blood at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to have zero of any talented player, but him and Jefferson in the second round, I'm struggling with. Thielen didn't die last time I checked. Dalvin Cook didn't die. I like Jefferson a lot, but you know, I just that's tough. There's really not much else, you know. I mean, Detroit brought in Terrell Williams and Perriman, but with Jared Goff, we've seen Swift's ADP go to like 2.4, 2.5. And then they brought in Jamal Williams too. Your thoughts on Detroit? But I mean, to me, that team looks like a dumpster fire.
Yeah, it does, because you got Tyrell Williams there, wanted to reunite with Anthony Lynn, so he was able to do that. And whenever Anthony Lynn was in, I want to say San Diego, but Los Angeles, he had 2 productive seasons, and so he reunites with him in Detroit, and then you bring in Rashad Berriman, which helps because as we found out, Williams isn't really suited to be like the number one guy. But it's hard to get excited about those 2 receivers. I'm not overly concerned about the addition of Jamal Williams on DeAndre Swift's fantasy value. I think it's actually good because I think they can play off of each other well. And he showed last year he can be very productive with 16 opportunities a game. And so I think that's a good thing. He'll stay fresher, longer and not get worn down from that workload, because not all backs can handle that type of a workload. So it's a pretty simple situation.
Yeah, I'm not against Swift. My first draft of the year, I got him at the end of the second round.
Yeah.
And I thought it was stealing. It turns out that I was right. Here's my thoughts, is that Dan Campbell, everyone is so focused on the Neanderthal part of Dan Campbell, biting the kneecaps and, Cro-Magnon man. But he did talk about using Swift a lot. So even a mild uptick over what he was doing last year, I think the comp you got to think about is Alvin Kamara.
Yeah,
Dan Campbell was in New Orleans. He saw what Alvin Kamara could do, and Swift has a lot of the same skill set. I was surprised at how good he ran between the tackles, and watching his tape when he was coming out, that was my question. And I think he answered those questions, that he could be a 3-down back if he had to be. I don't think they'll use him like that, but as you said, I think he's explosive enough to where, as long as he gets, last year the coaching was so bad, running Adrian Peterson out there, instead of Swift, that finally toward the end they gave Swift the ball more. But I got to figure that he has Alvin Kamara type usage in him.
Yeah, get him out in space, get him some targets. I think he'll be much more effective that way. Not saying he can't run between the tackles, but I'd love to see a guy like that get 4 or 5 receptions a game. Let's see what he can do with it.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's more like 6 or 7.
I'm good with that too. It's just he's dangerous.
I mean, Jared, but the big question is just how bad is that overall offense going to be?
Yeah.
And the answer could be, I mean, Jared Goff was bad with Sean McVay the last 2 years.
Yes.
What's he going to be like in just an average offense? I don't know. I just don't know. I'm not drafting Jared Goff as even my 3rd quarterback. Yeah. I would rather take a chance on a Cam Newton or someone like that. Perriman, hopefully he stays healthy. The last team that we're going to talk about is we kind of started at the top and worked our way to the bottom. The Houston Texans. They re-sign. They redo David Johnson's contract, and then they bring again the dustiest running back, Mark Ingram, to go with David Johnson on a rebuilding team. That signing made absolutely no sense to me, Eric.
Yeah, it's a tough running back by committee that's there. You got Mark Ingram that's coming off a career worst season in Baltimore. Just essentially fell out of the rotation last year. David Johnson, I think the key thing that he had going for him last year was volume, and so they're really going to cannibalize again each other's value. I would say one player I'm kind of intrigued by, but it comes down to Deshaun Watson. What's going to happen there is Tyrod Taylor. Uh, I guess his acquisition implies that, okay, we're going to trade Deshaun Watson. This is our insurance policy. But I just think back to 2017 with Tyrod Taylor, for where he led that Bills team to a playoff berth, and he finishes a QB1 in fantasy in 47% of his games. He averaged like 17 fantasy points per game that season. And so if he does open the season as a starter, I'm like, he could be a matchup-based streamer, once the season opens. And again, if you're in best ball, if you land him as like a QB3 or QB4, I'm like, he could have a nice return on investment.
Yeah, I'm not going to go there myself. Even if Watson is out, the offense is so bad. And, as you get older, the ability to, what really, his running floor, I just wasn't that impressed with him. I know he didn't have much time in San Diego, but didn't he go somewhere else after he left Buffalo too?
It was in Cleveland with the Browns.
And he didn't do much there, and they had to replace him after a few games. He's not a young guy anymore. I would rather take a chance on Justin Fields, a Trey Lance. I am not a huge fan of. I just, for me, if I lose because Tyrod Taylor beats me in a best ball, congratulations, you beat me. But that's why we talk about it, right? I guarantee you, as we go along, you'll convince me on some guys, and I think I hopefully will convince you on some as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I've been doing this thing, and I'm just going to show it. I've been working on this thing. Let's see if I have it on here. I need to do more work with it. But rather than us just closing out, I wanted to get some of your thoughts, because FFPC is, we got a little extra time, and the run that we're seeing, 2 to 3. Well, let me show you. So here is the form, and basically what we have here is, you see where it says Lamar Jackson?
Yes.
All right. So this is the QB1. This is the year. So 2017, 18, 19, 20 in FFPC. How many drafts each guy was drafted in, and what their ADP was. Okay, both the first quarterback off the board. That's how it's sorted. And then you can see what the actual round their ADP was. So last year, Lamar's was 2.0. Mahomes in 19 was going off the board on average at 2.6. Rodgers at 3.9. So you get that, right?
Exactly.
And then over here, you see the winning percentage. And you see what we tell people every year, Eric, don't draft the first quarterback off the board. It's just terrible. But then you look over at Patrick Mahomes over here. This is this year's ADP. So what I'm trying to do is analyze, because we're going so much faster. Let's go down. Number 2, 2.2, 5.5, 5.3, 3.7, 3.1. And you see Kyler's going off at 3.6. where you could get the third quarterback in years past from 4.8 to 6.0. 3.9 for Lamar, 5.6 to 6. So you get the idea here. Quarterbacks are going off early. And you can see where the value is every year is in the number 6 quarterback most years. Russell Wilson 1 year, Matt Ryan one year, Drew Brees one year, all had very good win percentages. But Justin Herbert's going at 4.8 rather than the middle of the 7th round.
Yeah.
Or the middle of the 6th round. So it's giving you quite a dilemma. And it goes all the way through. I mean, it's not just, go down to Trevor Lawrence, the 15th guy off the board in the 7th round instead of the mid-9th or the 10th. So I've been really trying to study this to come up with how I want to handle these runs. Then on this side, I took each quarterback by year, and you could see their win percentage by year, 2017, 18, 19, and 20, what round they were drafted in. So I'm going to be studying this a little more. If you guys are following this and you'd like to see me kind of do a pod on this, I could do it. But, it's kind of interesting. Some guys just, like Kyler. Kyler, in the FFPC at least, where he was going earlier than some other sites, had as good a year as he had a 9.9 win percentage, which isn't bad. Yeah. 8.4 is completely average year one. And then over here, you see where he's going now. So now you have to pay 3.6 for a guy who gave you a 10 win percentage at 5.4. It's a bit of a dilemma.
Now that is interesting. Just kind of looking, like I was even eyeing like Josh Allen, just to see where he was going last year. He was able to kind of outperform.
Well, and that's the thing. The guy who has the biggest win percentage. Let me pull it back up for you.
Yeah.
The guy who has the biggest win percentage most years is the guys, this is the sweet spot. The fifth QB off the board, the sixth QB off the board. Josh Allen was the 7th QB off the board at 7.5. Now you look at Josh Allen over here, and year one, he had a 7.5 win percentage, but I don't think he played the whole year. He didn't get drafted a ton. 8.8 and then 16.9, but he's going at 3.1 where he was at 7.5 last year. So typically that's the guy I tend to avoid because they tend to regress after a big year. And if they regress 10%, but their ADP goes up 50%, that's typically the guy that I want to be even or underweight on. A surprising guy is Kirk Cousins. We don't think of Kirk as this great quarterback, but he's never had a losing percentage. And last year he gave you 11% win rate in the 12th round. Yeah. He's going in the 8th, but he was the 17th quarterback off the board last year. And this year he is the 17th quarterback off the board. So that's why I put. What do you think of the way I laid this out?
No, I like it because I do agree with your point of where those kind of middle round like quarterbacks are the ones that can kind of elevate themselves to top 4 status. No, I'm all about that. No, I like that. I would like to dive into that like a little bit more. And that could be a really good pod episode. But yeah, it's all about just trying to find quarterbacks or just other fantasy assets that can outperform their ADP. And it's risky, with taking some of those early round guys.
The next part of this is, what goes up must come down, is the old saying.
Yeah.
Who's dropping? What positions are dropping? I believe it's tight end. And in a 1.5 PPR, I can't do it. Right. I need to add to the form, but I want to do a little more research on who's dropping. And I think the way to play it is, so some people say, well, historically late round QB wins, right? So I'm going to take quarterbacks in the 9th and 10th and 11th round like I always have. Well, in the 9th and 10th, now I got to get it back up again.
Yeah, but in best ball, I'm like it's different, to your
No.
point.
I mean, in best ball, you want it's the same thing, really.
Yeah.
But if you look at like here, quarterback 19 has had pretty good win percentages,
Hmm.
right? Quarterback 16 has had really good win percentages. So if you took Matt Ryan in
Hmm.
2018, if you nailed that guy or Dak in 2019 and you mixed him with one of these guys, you did really well for yourself. But the problem is, if you wait to the ninth round this year, you're not getting, in the ninth round this year, you're not getting the 15th or the 14th guy off the board. You're getting the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd guy. So
Yeah.
I think the assumption that you're going to just wait and draft them when you always did is a losing proposition. I think
Mhm.
drafting them really early could be a losing proposition too.
Yeah.
I think the key is that to find where the value is dropping and then come up with a plan where you're not getting, you're not just letting the QB run, go so far behind that you're lousy at the quarterback position,
Mhm.
but at the same time you're taking a guy who is, you're still taking some of the advantage. So what I tend to try and do is take a quarterback and then take a value, take a quarterback and then scoop a value. Um, that's what I've been doing so far. And a couple times I've taken two early quarterbacks and then just waited till like round 17 and taken a Cam Newton
Mhm.
for my third. But it's a dilemma whenever, every year the ADP changes according to what happened the year before.
Mhm.
And the people
Exactly.
who take the time to study the changes, because if you just go off of historical data, the historical data is going to mislead you. If you use the RotoViz tool, the RotoViz Explorer, well, if you got drafted a guy, your first quarterback in this round,
Mhm.
you had this winning percentage. Well, you know that information is based on 4 years when they weren't going two rounds earlier.
Mhm.
So it could lead you astray. I don't know if I made any sense with all that, but it's a conundrum.
Yeah. But it's still worth kind of understanding, that dynamic, especially if you're trying to figure out which quarterbacks to target. Yeah, I would say let's dive a little bit deeper into it. That was
Yeah,
good.
I'm gonna try and pull up some information on who's if quarterbacks are up two or three rounds,
Mhm.
other things have fallen. So
Yeah.
where is the value? Where can where can and how can you adjust? So I'm going to try and do that, guys. I think that's pretty much it. Eric, any final thoughts?
Now I'm just curious to see where Kenny Galladay lands. I'm sure we'll probably hear something tomorrow. I think he's staying overnight in the New York area.
He
Is
did
that
that. He
accurate?
did that last night.
Oh, okay. I thought he was staying
Is
overnight
he
tonight
still
as
there?
well.
I
I
don't
think he's
know.
still there. Yeah. So that could
Um,
easily be a deal that goes down. But no, it's just exciting. Free agency going on. Analysis to be had, and then we got the draft coming up. But yeah, that's all that I really wanted to add. I felt like it was a good conversation, good show, and just hit us up on Twitter. If anyone has any questions
there
or
is a
comments.
signing that we missed while we were on. It's a
Oh, what
running
happened?
back.
Oh, really? Okay.
Philip Lindsay. Guess where he
Oh.
landed?
Whew,
It's
the
one of the teams
Jets.
that we finished with.
God, I'm trying to think back what we're talking about. Oh,
It
just,
was the
just.
Texans.
Oh gosh,
Poor Philip Lindsay.
poor guy, poor guy. Oh, I'd love to see him land somewhere else, but yeah, that's
I'll
unfortunate
tell you,
because
I'm going to be interested in him with Mark
yeah.
Ingram and David Johnson. If he
Hmm.
stays in the mid double digit rounds,
Oh yeah, definitely.
DJ keeps and Ingram are older. They could get dinged up. Philip Lindsay is a talented guy. I just feel bad that he ended up. It's such a wasteland.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, he was able to get out of Denver, obviously, but not an ideal situation. So
No, I
we'll
would have
see.
liked to have seen him go to the Jets.
Yeah, that's where I was crossing my fingers saying, please say Jets, because I'm like they could really use him there because they don't have many running back options. But it wasn't meant to be.
Nope. All right, that's going to do it for this show, folks. Thank you very much. I want to thank our friends over at the FFPC. We've been using the FFPC tools. I want to thank my friends at RotoViz because the tools that I was showing you are Mike Beer's great tools. RotoViz is a great value. They're not a paid sponsor in any way. And I would recommend the FFPC regardless as well. So go to www.myffpc.com, sign up today, and get in there and challenge me. Say hello when you do. And that's going to do it, Eric. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week, and thank you so much.
Absolutely. No, thank you. Everyone have a good week. Until
right.
next time.
All right. Till next time.